Okay. So this is the Goodrich case, which is about the braking system. I'm Danielle Lindquist.
I'm Matt Merkin.
I'm Maddie Trish-Hauser.
I'm Hannah Grell.
I'm Diva.
Okay. So the airplane brake controversy. The Goodrich company had a really good reputation before going into this. So they were picked from the Air Force to work on the braking system. The executive engineers on the project didn't listen to the new engineers on the job because the new engineers were saying that the brakes were faulty, yet they said screw them because they were new, so they didn't really know what they were doing. And then when testing came around, the results came back that the brakes were overheating and sparks were coming off. So it was very dangerous. But instead of scraping the system and designing new brakes, they had put money and investment into their braking design. So they, again, were like, screw it, we're gonna modify the testing results to favor getting positive feedback. And then when the year came to a close, they still had problems with the brakes. But instead of just outright telling the Air Force that they had brakes that were failing, they lied in their reports to the Air Force that the brakes were working, which it did get caught though, that they were lying in the reports. But basically, lots of deception, and they didn't listen to the people on the job when it should have resulted in lots of faulty data.
All right. And one of the biggest unethical actions, and I'd say pretty much every ethical or unethical action that takes place, the main core of it is wanting more money. And there's no difference in this case. Goodrich, they wanted, that job, and they were known as being, one of the best companies that did brakes on those kind of in that situation. So they wanted to take that job away from any competition, have it for themselves. And with that reputation, they thought, oh, we do this really well, we're one of the best at it. We can just go in and kind of wing it. We'll figure it out as we go. We have a lot of time to get the job done. So after they were going with it, they're like, oh, we'll figure it out eventually. Well, it never happened. So with that not happening, that's how this happened. More than anything, just sum it up by they're wanting more money.
All right, and to go on to some more unethical actions that they took, they did a lot of falsification of data. It actually came out later that one of the people reporting and taking information throughout the test reported that he was ordered to provide faulty data that was not correct. They were then giving inaccurate reports, and then along with not listening to the maybe younger engineers who were less experienced, they were not respecting their concerns that they were raising. And then along with that, they were manipulating the testing conditions. So when they were testing these brakes, there was a lot of problems with overheating or parts failing because of that extra heat. So they would put fans, or they put really cool things to cool down those brakes so that therefore they could pass the standards that were set instead of having to start over and create a new braking system. Along with that, the testing standards that they were meeting and those qualifications were not that high. All in all, the testing standards and qualifications probably should have been higher. It's kind of sad, but you know that when you set a standard, it's probably going to be cheated a little bit. So you should always set the standard higher than what it actually needs to be in hopes that it'll be good enough for the part to be successful.
Okay, so a way to prevent this from happening again would be to hold greater accountability to both the people on the testing grounds and the higher ups. For this Goodrich situation, there was only one person. It seemed like there were very few people that were actually writing these reports. So the one guy was told to falsify, and he went to his superiors, and they said, no, write the report as given the falsified data, and change it up. So he didn't want to do that. So he was actually the one that blew the whistle on them, was the report writer. But so he had accountability, but there was no one else in the company that seemed to be backing him up. And all the higher ups were saying to falsify the report. And this is mostly due, of course, with greed. They said they want the contract, they don't want the competition, they need the money, falsify the reports and get it qualified no matter what. So I think that a way to prevent this would be to change the incentives so that they would place a greater emphasis on safety, because obviously if it breaks the past qualifications, it's not very safe for the pilot or anyone else in the plane. And so if there had been some sort of way to create incentive that would create a greater emphasis on safety than monetary gain, it would have been better. And for application to our profession, just accurately report stuff. Like if a higher up says, go lie about this report, just kind of change that a little bit and don't do it. You're not supposed to falsify data. It's important to report things with professional integrity. And also, if you are the person that is the higher up and like you have this awesome idea, you're top of the line, best engineer, you still can make mistakes. So listen to the younger engineers that might say, hey, do this, check your work, like go over things. And be open to like able to be critiqued and admit if you do something wrong, because a lot of bad things can happen.
So overall, the decision that the company made definitely was unethical, because they knew that brakes were not following the rules and regulations, and they were not really efficiently working, but still they decided to go with the project. So like we mentioned earlier in the presentation, definitely money was actually prioritized more than human life. So as engineers, we are being in a field where our integrity and our honesty would actually affect people's life and people in general. So we should be more careful and we should be open to feedback, and this means listening to anyone younger than you or anyone who are inexperienced, because they might be having better ideas that could be executed for a project. So after evaluating all the pros and cons of the suggestions and feedbacks, definitely you have to make the right decision, which would be reflecting your ethics as an engineer. Thank you.